Imagine for a second a world where the concepts of friend and enemy just completely vanish.
Right, the completely wiped out.
Yeah, and I don't mean that in some, naive, wishful thinking kind of way where everyone just holds hands. I mean a radical, fundamental shift in how you actually perceive reality at a neurological level.
It's a huge shift.
Right. You
Right.
look at the person who just cut you off in traffic or the coworker who deliberately threw you under the bus in a meeting, and the actual category of enemy simply doesn't exist in your brain anymore.
Which is wild because it challenges the very foundation of how we operate. I mean, we are so intensely wired to categorize the world into us and them.
Oh, absolutely.
It's an ingrained survival mechanism. We constantly scan our environment every single day to determine who is safe, who is an ally, and who is a threat.
Yeah, who's going to help me and who's going to hurt me. Right.
Exactly. And if you remove that filtering system, the entire architecture of human society, from office politics to international borders, it just starts to look entirely different.
Yeah. And that complete paradigm shift isn't just some modern thought experiment. It is the baseline reality presented in an ancient text.
A very ancient text.
Right. So today we're doing a deep dive into the source material to extract this psychological and philosophical framework from the Srimad Bhagavatam.
Specifically, we're looking at texts 11 through 18 of Canto 7, Chapter 5.
Right, along with some fascinating commentaries on the nature of attraction. Our mission today is to look at how a 5-year-old boy named Prahlāda stood in front of an empire's most powerful teachers and diagnosed the exact root cause of all human conflict.
It's such a compelling narrative because Prahlāda isn't just offering a critique of, bad behavior. He is literally dismantling the fundamental physics of human motivation.
He's going right to the source.
He really is. To understand why we fight, or why we even create the label of an enemy to begin with, the texts argue that we have to look much deeper than our surface disagreements.
Right.
We have to look at the underlying mechanism of attraction, like what is pulling our consciousness on a minute-by-minute basis.
Okay, let's unpack this, because before you have conflict, you have desire, right?
Always.
You want something, someone else wants it, or someone stands in the way of it. And the commentary we're looking at draws a massive line in the sand between two types of attraction. First, there is material attraction.
Which is a huge focus in these texts.
Yeah, and in this framework, material attraction is governed by the concept of Cupid. It's romantic, it's physical, sensory, and ultimately based on satisfying the self.
And contrasted against that is spiritual attraction. This is directed toward the Supreme Personality of Godhead, referred to here as Krishna.
Right.
And the text introduces a very specific title for Krishna here. The title is Manmatha Madana.
Manmatha Madana, what does that mean exactly?
It translates to the captivator of Cupid himself.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, think about the gravity of that for a moment. Cupid represents the absolute pinnacle of material desire, right? The force that drives almost all worldly action, reproduction, ambition.
The ultimate pole.
Exactly. Yet, the Supreme is so inherently attractive that the force of attraction itself is captivated by him. I mean, the word Krishna literally means the all-attractive one.
So if Krishna is the captivator of Cupid, it's almost like a black hole of attraction.
That's a great way to put it.
And the text uses an analogy to ground this, right? It compares material lust or desire to iron, and transcendental desire, the spiritual attraction, to gold.
Yes, the iron and gold analogy is central here.
It states bluntly that at no stage can iron and gold be equal. But I want to push back on this a bit for you listening, because it's easy to just say, oh, spiritual gold is better than material iron.
Sure, it sounds good on paper.
Right. But how does that actually play out in human consciousness? Why does Prahlāda care so much about this distinction?
Prahlāda cares because he experiences it as an involuntary state of being. Like it's not a choice for him anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, in text 14, he gives his teachers this brilliant mechanical analogy. He says that just as iron naturally, effortlessly moves toward a magnetic stone, his purified consciousness is automatically attracted to the Supreme Lord.
Automatically. So he's not like forcing it.
Exactly. He isn't forcing himself to be religious. He isn't following a strict set of rules just to be a good boy. His consciousness has been restored to its natural state. And in that natural state, the soul is drawn to the Supreme, just as gravity pulls an apple to the earth.
Okay, I get the magnet analogy, but let's look at the world around us.
Right, it doesn't really match up, does it?
No. If we are all naturally attracted to the spiritual, like iron to a magnet, Why is human history just one long, chaotic obsession with the material iron?
That is the big question.
Why are we all sprinting in the opposite direction, chasing the lesser metal, if our default setting is supposed to be the spiritual magnetic pull?
And the texts provide a very clear mechanism for it. It's called material contamination.
Contamination.
Yeah. The natural magnetic pull hasn't disappeared at all. It's just being obstructed. Imagine a powerful magnet, but it has been dropped into a swamp.
Okay, a swamp.
Right. And it's covered in thick, hardened layers of mud, rust, and dirt. The magnetic frequency is still emitting, obviously, but the iron won't move because the physical interference is just too dense.
Oh, that makes total sense. So what is the mud made of in this context?
The mud is the false ego.
This false ego.
Yeah, it's the accumulated desire to enjoy the material world independently, to be, the center of our own universe.
Right, the I, me, mine mentality.
Exactly. The sources explain that everyone has this original, pure attraction dormant within the heart. But when we identify completely with our temporary physical bodies and our temporary material desires, we're basically just packing more and more mud onto the magnet.
So we're smothering it ourselves.
We are. But when the heart is eventually cleansed of this dirt, the text argues that the original attraction simply manifests on its own. You don't have to create it, you just have to uncover it.
Wow. And when you realize everyone's vision is distorted by this heavy layer of mud, you suddenly understand why we fracture the world into factions.
We literally can't see reality.
Right. We can't see the underlying magnetic realities, so we obsess over the dirt on the surface. And this sets the stage perfectly for Prahlāda's situation in the classroom. Let's paint the picture here for everyone.
Yes, the classroom scene is iconic.
Prahlāda is a prince. He is being taught the standard curriculum for a future king.
And that curriculum is heavily focused on politics, diplomacy, and economics.
Your practical stuff.
Yeah, the material stuff. In the context of this text, the very foundation of politics is the philosophy of duality.
Duality.
Right. Considering someone a friend who can help you,
Yeah.
and someone else an enemy who hinders you, the teachers are trying to instruct him on how to maintain power by playing different factions against each other.
And Prahlāda, who's literally 5 years old, stands up and completely invalidates their entire syllabus.
Just throws it out the window.
Yeah. In text 11, he tells his powerful teachers that the distinctions of my friend and my enemy are an absolute delusion.
A complete hallucination.
Exactly. He says they're a hallucination created by an external, deluding energy. He's basically telling them, hey, you guys are experts in something that isn't even real.
It's such a bold move. He introduces them to the concept of the pandita, which means a truly learned person.
Okay.
According to Prahlāda's philosophy, the defining characteristic of a learned person isn't how many books they've read or how much political power they wield. It is whether they possess equal vision.
Equal vision. Meaning what, exactly?
Means a pandita does not look at a crowd and see allies and threats. They look at all the different bodies, and the text actually mentioned 8,400,000 species of life, and they see every single living entity as an eternal part and parcel of the Supreme.
Okay, so the text leans heavily into the word ekatvam here, which means oneness. But it's vital to clarify what kind of oneness it's talking about, because it's not the generic, we're all one, so I am God and you are God kind of philosophy. No?
Exactly. It is not that at all. The text is very precise about the mechanics of this oneness.
So what is the mechanic?
Ekatvam, in this framework, does not mean artificially declaring everyone equal to God. The distinction is that God is the supreme master, and every living entity, without exception, is an eternal servant of that master.
Ah, okay.
The oneness comes from the fact that we all share the exact same fundamental identity and purpose. We're all on the same platform of servitorship.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, though. Because if we apply this to the real world, it sounds like a recipe for becoming a complete doormat.
I know, that's the immediate reaction most people have.
Right, let's say someone deliberately steals money from my business or actively tries to ruin my reputation. I'm feeling pure iron-level anger. How does the text expect a normal person to navigate a hostile world without recognizing those people as enemies? If I drop the enemy label, do I just let people walk all over me?
Well, it is an incredibly demanding standard.
Yeah.
And the text does not compromise on it at all. It actually diagnoses the reaction you just described, seeing someone who harms you as an enemy as pasubhuti.
Pasubhuti. Meaning
That translates directly to animalistic intelligence.
animalistic. Wow, that's intense.
It is very intense. The text argues that it's the mindset of a beast in the jungle to think, oh, this creature is different from me, it threatens my territory, therefore my duty is to destroy it.
Or flight.
Exactly. The philosophical stance here is that the Supreme Lord is the ultimate friend of everyone. The text posits a concept called the supersoul.
The localized expansion, right?
Yes, the localized expansion of the divine dwelling in the heart of every single living being. If you look at someone and only see an enemy, the text argues you are completely blind to the supersoul within them.
Which means
Which means you are entirely disconnected from the spiritual reality within yourself, too. You can't have it both ways.
And we need to be really transparent about just how radically the source material applies this. The commentary notes that from this elevated viewpoint, human-made nations, closed communities, and political groups, essentially any system that requires an us versus them mentality to function, they're considered a useless waste of a valuable life.
It's a sweeping statement.
It is. And to be clear, we are simply reporting the text's philosophy here for this deep dive to understand its depth. We aren't endorsing any specific political ideology or suggesting you go out and tear up your passport.
Right. We're remaining strictly impartial here.
Exactly. But it highlights that Prahlāda isn't just preaching like personal inner peace. He's describing a state of consciousness that renders our entire way of organizing society completely obsolete.
Because if you truly, at a core level, believe everyone is an eternal servant of the Supreme, then engaging in sectarian or nationalistic rivalry isn't just mean, it's mathematically incorrect.
Mathematically incorrect. I love that.
Yeah. It's dedicating your life to an illusion.
But nature abhors a vacuum. If you strip away the labels of friends and enemies, what actually replaces them?
You need a new operating system.
Right. You can't just walk around in a blank, emotionless void where everyone is the generic blob. How do you actually interact with people?
Well, if you remove enmity, you must replace it with service. The text offers a highly practical framework for daily interaction, which is universal service.
Universal service.
Because everyone is a servant of the Supreme, everyone is connected to the Master. And therefore, everyone deserves profound respect.
Even the people who annoy you.
Especially them. The text notes that a true practitioner operates out of such natural humility that they address every other living entity as Prabhu,
Prabhu.
which means master.
Wait, so you treat the servant of the master as your master?
Exactly.
That is an extreme, almost aggressive level of humility. And this leads to a concept I find absolutely fascinating in the purport of text 12. It introduces something called Vaikuntha competition.
Oh, this is one of the best parts.
It really is. So Vaikuntha is the term for the spiritual world, right? The place without anxiety.
Yes.
And the text acknowledges that even in the spiritual realm, there is still rivalry. There is still competition. It doesn't become this boring, flat utopia where everyone just floats on clouds.
Right, there's dynamic action.
But the mechanism of that competition is entirely inverted.
Precisely. Because material competition is a zero-sum game. For me to win, you must lose.
Right.
For me to look good, I need to make sure you look a little bit worse. It is entirely driven by the false ego trying to establish superiority.
Think of a toxic corporate office.
A perfect example.
People compete by hoarding information, taking credit for other people's work, and secretly hoping their colleagues fail so they can look better to the boss.
We've all been there.
Yeah, that's the material competition of friends and enemies. But Vaikuntha competition is like an elite championship-level basketball team.
I love this analogy.
On that team, the players are competing fiercely, but they're competing to see who can set up the other players for the most spectacular winning shot.
Right.
They are competing to get the most assists. The text explains that in this spiritual competition, you appreciate and praise another person's service rather than condemning them or being proud of your own work.
Because the goal isn't your own glory.
Exactly. You want the Supreme to be served, and you genuinely celebrate whoever does it best.
What's fascinating here is how applying this equanimity in daily life completely dismantles the toxic human ego.
It totally defangs it.
Yeah. If someone in your field achieves something amazing, the default material reaction is envy. We feel a little sting because we compare their success to our own perceived lack of it.
Yep, the old comparison trap.
But if you shift to Vaikuntha competition, your immediate reaction to their success is to actively praise their contribution to the whole. You practice the ultimate form of spiritual equality just by changing how you compete. You break the zero-sum game entirely.
It sounds beautiful in theory. Really, it does. But when you take this radical, non-competitive, everyone is my master equanimity and drop it into a world that absolutely thrives on exploitation and us versus them,
You run into a brick wall.
well, you become a massive threat. And that brings us to the explosive pushback from the material world in texts 15 through 18.
The establishment doesn't just disagree with Prahlāda, they are enraged by him.
Furiously enraged.
His teachers, Sanda and Amarka, are just livid. And the text uses a very specific term for them. Seminal Brahmanas.
Seminal.
This is crucial for understanding their motivation.
Right, because a true Brahmana is a spiritual guide, someone whose authority comes from their pure character, equal vision, and devotion. But seminal implies something very different.
It means they claim their high status merely by birthright.
Ah, nepotism.
Exactly. They were born from the semen of a famous, qualified teacher, so they demand the respect of the title without putting in the actual spiritual work. They lack actual qualification.
So they're just resting on their laurels.
Basically. So instead of serving the Supreme, what do? They act as paid servants to a materialistic, atheistic king.
Prahlāda's father, Hiranyakasipu.
Yes.
Huh.
Their entire identity and livelihood depend on maintaining the material hierarchy.
They're basically political operatives wearing the robes of priests.
That's a perfect way to describe it.
And they're terrified because they realize that if Prahlāda's philosophy of universal equality catches on, the whole hierarchy collapses.
A house of cards falls down.
The king loses his authority, and they lose their cushy jobs. So they try desperately to force this 5-year-old back into the materialistic matrix. They relentlessly drill him on 3 concepts: dharma, artha, and kama.
These are the 3 cyclical paths of materialistic life. Dharma in this specific corrupted context means performing religious rituals strictly for material gain.
Just going through the motions to get stuff.
Right. Artha is economic development, and kama is sense gratification.
It's basically the ancient version of modern hustle culture.
It really is.
It's like using mindfulness meditation, which would be dharma not to achieve enlightenment, but just to optimize your focus so you can crush your sales targets.
Which is artha.
Right, so you can finally buy that luxury car to satisfy your senses, which is kama. It's an endless treadmill. You pray for money, you get the money, you buy things, you get bored, you pray for more money.
And Sanda and Amarka need Prahlāda on that treadmill.
They desperately need him to buy in.
But Prahlāda, whose internal magnet is already locked onto the spiritual gold, is completely immune to it. He just ignores their syllabus entirely.
He's not buying what they're selling.
Not at all. And when pacification and persuasion fail, the teachers drop the facade entirely. Text 16 shows them calling for a stick.
A stick!
Yeah,
The ultimate tool of persuasion.
the text actually outlines the 4 kinds of political diplomacy used to suppress an agitator.
Oh, this is fascinating. What are they?
First, you try to pacify them. If that fails, you offer them a lucrative post. You basically bribe them into this system.
Co-opt them.
Right. If they still resist, you create dissension among their followers. And finally, when all else fails, you use severe punishment or weapons.
The stick.
Yes. In classical logic, this is argumentum ad baculum, the appeal to the stick. They can't defeat Prahlāda philosophically, so they resort to physical violence to satisfy their king.
And as they are threatening this child, they use this incredibly vivid, revealing analogy in text 17.
It's such a powerful image.
They say the demoniac dynasty, their entire materialistic empire, is like a beautiful, highly valuable sandalwood forest. Prahlāda is a strong, hard thorn tree that has inexplicably grown inside that forest. Lord Vishnu, the Supreme, is the axe.
And Prahlāda is the handle.
Yes. Prahlāda, the thorn tree, is providing the wooden handle for the axe that is going to chop down their entire civilization.
It is a stunning admission of fear.
It's the ultimate irony. These teachers despise Prahlāda, yet their own analogy proves they understand his function better than anyone. They see exactly what his equanimity will do to their world.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to ask why.
Yeah, why is a massive, heavily armed empire terrified of a 5-year-old boy who just wants to treat everyone equally?
Because a society built on exploiting the material world requires division to survive. An empire needs enemies to justify its military budget.
That makes a lot of sense.
It needs strict social hierarchies to keep the workers at the bottom and the leaders at the top. It needs the population to be completely obsessed with acquiring the material iron so they keep running on the economic treadmill.
They need people distracted by the mud.
Exactly. Prahlāda's philosophy fundamentally undermines all of that. A society built on us versus them simply cannot tolerate a citizen who sees through the mud, who looks at an enemy and sees a brother, and who refuses to play the zero-sum game.
Wow.
Prahlāda is the handle of the axe, because his unshakable spiritual attraction threatens to sever the very roots of their reality.
That is just... Man, let's take a breath and recap the incredible territory we've covered today. We started by exploring how shifting our core baseline attraction from the material iron of Cupid to the spiritual gold of Krishna doesn't just, change our weekend
Yeah,
plan.
it's not a hobby.
No, it literally rewires how our brain processes reality. We examined how scraping the mud off our consciousness melts away the delusion of friends and enemies.
The whole Pasubhuti illusion.
Exactly. We saw how we can replace toxic, zero-sum rivalries with Vaikuntha competition, where the ultimate victory is elevating the people around you, getting those assists.
Beautiful concept.
And finally, we saw how truly embodying this equanimity doesn't make you weak. It makes you a powerful disruptor, an axe handle to any status quo that relies on keeping people divided and afraid.
It is a complete inversion of everything we are taught about how to succeed in the world.
It really is.
And to leave you with one final mind-bending detail from the source material to ponder as you go about your day.
I love this part.
The text states that the Supreme Lord is situated within everyone's heart, and from that position, he is giving dictation based entirely on that person's mentality.
Dictation, like instructions.
Yes, if someone sincerely wants to serve, they receive the dictation to do so. But if someone wants to challenge the universe, exploit others, and act out of pure ego, they receive a different dictation that allows them to forget their spiritual nature and blindly play that role.
Wait, so if someone is attacking me or acting like my worst enemy, they are actually just operating on a script they received because of their own unpurified attitude.
Yes,
They are just a fellow servant caught in the grip of a different internal dictation.
that's exactly what the text is saying.
Man, how would your interactions change tomorrow if you viewed the people who frustrate you the most through that exact lens? What if the person trying to ruin your day isn't your enemy at all, but just a magnet buried under a very heavy layer of mud?
It changes everything.
It really does. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. We wish you the best of luck navigating your own Vaikuntha competition out there in the real world. Until next time.